You're going to get me fired up on this topic of fake gurus and whatnot. But yeah, most people, I would say most creators on the internet are frauds and they're sellouts. And the reality here is that most AI SaaS tools suck. We are in a trust recession right now that's getting worse every single day in terms of people not knowing, is this real or is this AI? And what happens when the average person asks that question every time they read something, listen to something, or watch something? When you lose trust, I don't know about you, but I'm not going to get my wallet out and buy something. If I don't trust something, I'm not going to buy something. So you think of all the implications that this has from a societal standpoint, from an economic standpoint, it's going to get very bad in my opinion. I'm trying to be optimistic about it, but this is one of the biggest issues I've always told people about AI. It's not AGI, it's not these transformers, or it's not Skynet taking over the world. It's what happens when the average person questions, is this real or is this AI? And no one has any idea what to believe anymore.
Welcome to the Mindblowers podcast. We are here with Ryan Dozer. Hi, Ryan.
Daniel, thank you so much for having me on.
We're going to talk about AI tools. Over the past 18 months, I know you've tested a lot of different tools, but for you, what do you see as the game changers?
Yeah, so I probably tested, honestly, over 100 tools at this point. And the reality here is that most AI SaaS tools suck, wrappers, upselling API costs. But what I've seen really significantly and what's mattered and moved the needle, I would say first and foremost is the rise of AI automations. Now, automations have been around for, over a decade now, right? With Zapier as kind of a legacy player, but now we have Make.com, we have N8N, we have Gumloop. And so I think the rise of AI automations and how feasible that has become, integrating OpenAI, Gemini, or Anthropic modules in the mix for automating various tasks like data entry, lead gen, social media, things like that. So AI automations, I would say, is number one. I would say AI web browsers is probably another significant update. We just saw ChatGPT Atlas as I'm talking to you, 2 days ago, a day ago at this point. Perplexity Comet was big news when that rolled out. I'm actually using the Comet browser right now to record this podcast. We're seeing Google Gemini integrated more into their Chrome browser. We saw Dia or whatever the other AI web browsers are at this point, but that's another big one. And I would say in addition to that, the involvement of generative AI media, whether that's audio, images, or video. Just in the past, what did you ask, 18 months, something like that? I mean, Look at Veo, look at Sora, right? Look at Nano Banana from an image generation perspective, or GPT Image One, or 11 Labs as they're continually upgrading their audio models. So I think generative AI media, AI automations, and AI web browsers are three really big ones that come to mind.
So I think a lot of our viewers, they might think, oh, but this sounds really technical, right? Do I need to kind of build my agentic models to get the full value out of AI these days? How technical is it to really gain value?
I mean, you don't have to be super technical. I mean, like in an automation perspective, if you go into make.com, it's built for people like me. I'm not technical. I don't know anything about coding or development. And so I'd recommend, if you're getting into the automations world, starting with a make.com or a Zapier. N8N's a great product, but it's still super technical in my opinion. And in terms of the images and video side of things, I mean, anyone can just log on to a web application with Google Gemini or Google AI Studio and start generating images within a chat browser. You're just prompting it like you normally would. Same with AI videos with Sora and all the other tools floating around. And then obviously with the AI web browsers, you can just install those, and those are very user-friendly. There's really no coding knowledge required there.
Yeah, it's actually amazing. I had this crazy experience earlier this week where I had an idea for a game because I wanted to show my kids a little bit like what were the 80s like, what were the 90s like, and even the 70s where I was born. And so I told ChatGPT about my idea. You know what happened? It created the game. Like, I didn't ask it to create the game. I just said, I have this idea. Would that be possible? The prompt output was the game.
Yeah, the vibe coding thing is getting really crazy with Claude and ChatGPT. I know they have Codex and Claude Code. I haven't gone that far down the rabbit hole of vibe coding. I've kind of just stayed in my lane, I would say, of more content creation, marketing, general business use.
Yeah, but I think the reason I shared that story, and I think we can show a little clip here of what the game looks like, is that I think it surprises people what you can actually do without technical expertise, right? I'm like, what? I just created a game, and it's a real game, right? Obviously, I had to put some more work into it, right? So I think it's just important to say that all the stuff we're talking about here, like, you don't need to be a programmer or an automation specialist, right? Anybody can pretty much do this.
Yeah, and on that point, I'm glad you brought that up because there is kind of this mentality that floats around, at least on the internet, though, where everyone's like, "Well, I'll just vibe code it, right? Or vibe market it." Vibe marketing is another term in my niche. But the reality here is that if you're not a subject matter expertise in understanding what good looks like or what actually moves the needle, you're not going to build a viable product, in my opinion, at least from what I've seen, that actually sells something or moves the needle. You have to understand the foundations of whatever you're doing first and then leverage something like vibe coding or another AI solution to make it even better.
That's a really good point, right? So I worked for Meta when kind of digital marketing was a little bit more of a new thing. And I remember everybody said, yeah, you have to understand all these digital things about likes and view through duration and so on. And the first thing I understood was, well, first of all, if you want to do marketing, you need to understand marketing. If you don't know what good looks like in marketing, you're not going to be a good digital marketer either. And
Exactly.
I guess that's exactly what you're saying, right?
Exactly. I mean, the example I always give is someone could create an AI agent or this 1,000 node automation on N8N that we see everywhere on the internet that pumps out 1 million blog posts a day or 1 million AI UGC videos. But if those don't actually convert to anything, they don't drive emails, they don't drive sales, revenue, etc. What is the point? You're just wasting your time blasting out AI slop. I understand why these people are doing it for clicks and clout on the internet, but from a user perspective, what is the point of engaging with that type of thing if it doesn't actually move the needle?
Yeah, it's really interesting, right? I mean, AI will now put kind of filmmaking capabilities in the hands of everybody. It doesn't mean you're going to make a great film if you don't know how to make a great story and you don't know how to direct it, right? Um, so I guess that's kind of the same. But like for most, let's talk about most small businesses, for example, or people in white collar careers. For you, what have been like the tools where you said, well, this is something that will really help productivity? Where would you start?
Well, I would first start with ChatGPT Plus. I always tell people we could go down the rabbit hole with 1 million tools, but if you don't understand and master everything inside ChatGPT Plus, I would recommend just starting there. Everything's going to make more sense. And then in addition to that, you can go down Claude or Gemini. And I think all of these tools have their own specialties just from me testing this, right? So Claude is really great for me at copywriting. I think it's Claude Sonnet 4. I believe that's their latest model at the point of me talking to you about this, but that's what my favorite model is for copywriting. I've heard it's very good at coding. You have Gemini, which has a very long context window. So if you're doing anything summarization wise, Gemini is a great model for that, or even images like images or videos, anything media related, Gemini is great at. Perplexity, right? If you're doing anything research related, I think Perplexity is a great option for that. If you're doing anything audio, 11 Labs. If you're doing anything video related, you have HeyGen to create AI avatars. You have Opus Clip to chop up long form video into short form clips. So I always suggest ChatGPT Plus to start. That's just for general AI use cases. Learn all the features there and master them. And then, based on whatever your specific needs and use cases are, then you venture off into the other tools. That's my recommendation.
But what do you think is the best way from going from the real casual user? I mean, I talk to many casual users, right? And many of them say AI is so stupid, right? And the first thing I tell them is, well, isn't that because you don't give it the context it needs? Uh, like we talked before on, can your best friend help you with where you should go on holiday? Yeah, maybe. Maybe he can help you better than AI because he knows you better than AI does, right? But if you tell AI more about yourself, it will actually give you great advice on where you might go. Um, but how do you think we get people over that first hurdle of just asking AI without context?
Yeah, for sure. So whether it's ChatGPT, Gemini, or Claude, we'll just stick with those three. You need to start creating customized versions of AI, right? You can't just go to the main screen of ChatGPT and shotgun some one-shot prompt you saw on the internet and expect like this silver bullet response. I would recommend creating either GPTs or ChatGPT projects. And the way to do that, I think they're both free now at this point, or maybe you have to be on paid for a GPT, but they're always changing these regardless. Create a project or a GPT, edit the custom instructions, and then also upload any relevant knowledge. This could be SOPs, this could be PDFs, this could be spreadsheets. And my recommendation too is whatever your particular task is, I would recommend making one GPT or one project for that particular task. So for me, like email newsletters, I have a dedicated project just for email newsletters. I've gotten so granular with this that I've given it every single subject line with the open rate percentage and the click through rate percentage, along with the actual body of the emails that perform very well. So I can train this over time to make sure that my outputs are not only going to be better as time goes on, but also reflect my writing style, my tone, my different CTAs that I use, and just making sure that it's all aligned with my writing style.
So let's just talk about projects versus custom GPTs. Can you kind of explain what you find the differences between the two and when you would use one or the other?
Absolutely. I made a whole YouTube video dedicated to this a few weeks ago. And I think the only benefit right now, in my opinion, of a custom GPT is the ability to share it externally. If you're not within a Chat GPT Teams plan or enterprise plan, you can share projects within those plans. If you're not in those, you can't share projects externally. There's no URL that it generates to share it. That's the only benefit. So with projects, now you can add more features. So we can use like Chat GPT agent mode, deep research, some of these other features that you cannot use inside custom GPTs as of this writing. And then also projects are just very good for organizing chats. So if you have chats within a custom GPT, it doesn't organize it. You have to go through the pain of going through your chat history on the left-hand side and remembering, what was that chat from, et cetera, et cetera. And projects, you can have an organized chat list, delete it. You also have project only memory now. So if you want to create a project where it has memory dedicated to that specific project, you can do that. I don't believe you can do that with GPTs at this point in time. I just think projects are the more superior option for most people.
Yeah, that's interesting. I'm kind of using both. But I also thought about that. The problem with the GPTs, right, is you can't go in and like run an agent or do like deep research and things like that once you're in GPT mode. How much have you actually explored custom GPTs, kind of the market out there? I mean, the custom ones that are made, you can access in the, I don't know if I should call it the shop. I guess many of them are free.
Yeah, the GPT store, I think is what you're
Yeah.
referring to. There was a lot of hype around that when it first came out. And I'm not saying GPTs aren't useful. They're definitely useful. But there are several good ones out there. But honestly, now that ChatGPT has apps that they just rolled out a few weeks ago, in my mind, this is almost making GPTs obsolete, because once they start rolling out these apps for official providers, we can now use those right inside the ChatGPT interface versus messing around with the GPT store. And there was all this, hype about these creators are going to get revenue from OpenAI. I have yet to hear a single person who made a cent from OpenAI creating a GPT, and they just had to sell those externally to make money from their own GPTs outside of OpenAI's ecosystem. So I think GPTs are still useful. Don't get me wrong here. I just think if we're looking at an apples to apples with projects versus GPTs, I still think projects are the better option.
Interesting. Where if we look, let's just say 1 year ahead, I think it's difficult to look much more than that. In terms of projects and GPTs, how do you think they will evolve? I mean, what are you expecting? Do you think like they will kind of add another level to custom GPTs that will then make them more interesting than projects again? Or do you think the way to go is just projects?
I think something really interesting on this note is ChatGPT's developer mode, how they're now integrating MCP or model context protocol right inside the interface. So it's still buggy. I made a video on my channel talking about it. There's still a lot of hiccups and errors and whatnot. But eventually what's going to happen, I'm not sure how familiar you are with MCP, is that you can integrate something like Zapier MCP inside the ChatGPT interface and start interacting with, 3,000 or 4,000 plus different applications and connect those two two ecosystems together versus prior, you'd have to use an automation platform and sync up API keys and do it that way. I think that is going to be very, very big for the average user if they can just use apps like that inside the ChatGPT interface versus maybe potentially trying to train a project or a GPT. I think those will always be useful. But I mean, if you're going to be able to connect to your apps and different ecosystems right from the main interface, I think that's a game changer, in my opinion, once OpenAI starts to figure out MCP and make it more accessible and usable for the average person.
Yeah, that's interesting. I have toyed a little bit with it. I wanted to make a YouTube custom GPT that would suggest trending topics to me. So it had to kind of make a call to the YouTube API, and it worked for just about 10 seconds, and then it crashed. And I simply couldn't get it to work. And I made, I think, like 25 attempts on like repairing the code. It just didn't really work. They just seem kind of clunky, those solutions, at least if you're relatively non-technical as myself. And I think that could be a game changer, right? If you can really connect the apps.
It is very clunky right now, and you're better off using an automation platform like Zapier, N8N, Make.com, and just using APIs from OpenAI's module and connecting it with other apps in a workflow that way. But I think for the average person, right, even that's super technical and confusing, is getting into an automation platform. So if OpenAI can keep everything inside ChatGPT's interface, I think they're only going to open it up, for the average person to explore MCP and other functionalities as they roll them out.
So if you work with a smaller company and they don't really know where to start, they just say, let's say we are a small consultancy company, and they're like, yeah, I mean, we would love to get more new clients. We would obviously also, we would like to be more efficient at our back end. Like, where would you start with that company? Where should they be looking to in terms of tools and strategies if they want to become kind of future-proof in their business?
Yeah, I think the biggest place that businesses screw up is they first need to make sure that their systems are in order before they start going down any form of AI rabbit hole and thinking that AI is going to solve all their problems. If you don't have a built like a CRM that accurately tracks all your data, like HubSpot or Salesforce or Go High Level, whatever the CRM is, you need to make sure that that is cleaned up, that is as tidy as possible. All the data is accurate. You've scrubbed it. You need to just make sure that your systems are aligned before we start going down any form of AI path. And then after that, I would actually recommend looking into your existing CRM, and in terms of automation, see what types of internal automations that your CRM already offers before we look at a third-party solution like Zapier, N8N, or Make.com, for instance, because HubSpot has a lot of automations, Salesforce does, Go High Level does. So if you're going to leverage those with your existing data, I would start there. And then after that, if let's say you don't have all the custom automations and whatnot that you don't want, you first need to establish, okay, what are some tasks that I'm working on that should be automated? Is it data entry? Is it following up with leads or anything pertaining to lead generation? Is it content creation and repurposing long form content into short form variations for the multiple platforms? Is it social media where we could fully automate our social media? Is it even something as simple as AI note taking and doing stuff with the transcriptions from our meetings and creating action items and creating content around those meeting transcriptions? So long story short, make sure your systems are in place and then figure out after that what tasks that you're doing that you're just daunting, but are very, very important to the bottom line.
So if we, for example, look at, let's talk about sales and marketing. So I don't know, have you tested, I think it's also called Atlas, this AI caller? I've seen the ads, right, that calls up 400 clients a day. And I mean, I'm just really wondering, like, we can try and speculate about this. Will that work, right? Some of the most difficult tasks to hire people for is cold calling, right? Because people don't want to talk to salespeople. So if that starts to work, it would be a huge game changer. That said, it's also one I worry about, right? Because how would clients really react, right? to being called up by an AI, what would that tell them about your company? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, first of all, I'm not sure what the regulations are in various countries if we're just gonna be blasting people's phones 24/7 with, like, the
Yeah.
FTC in the United States. I'm not sure, right? I'm not a lawyer, I don't know the legality behind that. But from an ethical standpoint too, obviously, yes, it makes a lot of sense from an efficiency standpoint to blast out using an AI phone agent versus hiring someone for that. But I also think too that, for in most industries, and again, I'm not big into cold calling or anything like that, I just think people are getting tired of cold calling, right? Especially when it's coming from AI agents and they're just going to start blocking numbers. And the more numbers that you use and the more numbers that you're going to get blocked, I would say that, the less effective overall that this is going to be in terms of outbound and deliverability. And similar to cold email, if you're going to start using AI agents or AI to just blast out 1,000 different emails that you're buying from various lists, all these providers like Gmail and Outlook, they're probably going to blacklist your entire domain at some point. So you have to be very careful with this thought process and mentality of, I'm just going to use an AI agent or an AI solution to blast out a million phone calls, blast out a million texts, blast out a million emails. Again, sounds shiny on the internet when someone's trying to sell you something, but in practice, I'm not sure how practical solutions like that are.
No, I guess if we talk customer service, you can get quite far today. I've seen some solutions with companies where you simply add all the information about the company, uh, and then the AI was actually extremely accurate on a chat, actually explaining, okay, if you want to do this, the terms are, the terms and the process and everything, they would explain it better than a salesperson could, right? But there's also the danger, right? I mean, can you trust it? Who do you want to supervise it before it's like 100% solid?
Yeah, there always has to be some human in the loop. I know there was some story I saw not too long ago with like American Airlines or some airline company where someone knew it was an AI bot, whether it was a chat bot or a phone agent, whatever it was. And they tried this workaround trying to give them like free flight credits or free tickets. And it ended up working because on the back end, they didn't close that part off, whatever that comment was that someone asked. So there are obviously a lot of errors here. There's also a lot of liability as well if it's telling someone to do something that is illegal or isn't suggested or whatever. But yeah, there definitely is a lot of use cases for it. But if you're dealing with anything higher ticket, I think there always has to be a human in the loop, especially high ticket sales. If it's just general customer service, sure, I could see AI definitely taking over that market. But anything high ticket, I don't know about you, but in the real world, I know that face to face, person to person, oftentimes has a much higher closer rate than using an agent or an automation or some AI voice.
Yeah, and to some extent, I guess it's a question of respect, right? If somebody wants my time, but they're not willing to invest their own, I guess I'll be kind of reluctant. I think that kind of human factor will last for a while. That said, I think if I want some information or service and I contact some company and I can actually see that their AI is more efficient than a call center would be, I would be happy to talk to that AI, right? I just think if things get too complex, then I would prefer to get passed on to somebody with a lot of expertise that can then help me with this special case.
I completely agree. And one thing we didn't even talk about on that note is all the scams that come along with AI calling and AI emailing. And now the technology is so good where it can clone voices. And now we have tools like Vio and Sora that can create deep fake videos of people and make that look realistic paired with the voice. Now, that's a whole other rabbit hole that I'm not sure we have enough time in this podcast to go down, but that's definitely a scary reality that we're living in.
That's interesting. Actually, I think you still hear a lot of people talking about like AGI and when will AI replace us. I think a more interesting conversation at this point is like how much work, reliable work, can a model do today without interference. Um, and I think we are having problems kind of estimating that exactly, right? Because it depends on the task. How have you seen that kind of change over the last 18 months? We can talk about both uh, um, uh, in terms of creating video or images, or like writing an email or doing a report. But how do you see the amount of work that one prompt can actually do reliable?
Yeah, I think this idea that one prompt is just going to solve all your problems, I think that is not a viable solution, right? Again, it goes back to the custom AI stuff where if you don't have custom instructions, you don't have data, simply shotgunning Chat GPT with just one prompt is not actually going to do anything. And very rarely are real world problems actually solved from just one prompt, right? I think the more important aspect to consider, like I mentioned earlier, though, is having your systems and data in place, right? So if you're going to prompt these models, whether it's a project or a GPT or even on the main screen of Chat GPT, you can still add exclusions and custom instructions. A lot of people don't know that. And so you have to have these systems, instructions, and knowledge down before you can even start getting into thinking this one prompt is going to change everything. And by the way, a quick little prompting tip: if you don't know what to do, go to ChatGPT and say, hey, I need you to create an advanced prompt for XYZ versus just saying, hey, do this, this, and this, right? It'll create a more detailed prompt, especially if you're using like the thinking mode on GPT-5. It'll create all the little granular details in that prompt to get a better output versus just trying to shotgun something yourself. And another quick tip on that is voice dictation. I use a tool called Voice Inc. Whisperflow is another one that's becoming a hot trend lately. If you're trying to get all of your thoughts out that are in your head and being more efficient in general than just typing things out, you leverage voice dictation. I've noticed instantly that when I do this, what I'm seeing in my terms of my delivery from a voice is much different than me sitting there trying to think as I'm typing out a prompt. So that's what I would leave you with that.
Just talking to ChatGPT. I mean, talking literally, not writing to it, because I talk to it all the time instead of writing.
Yeah, I mean, maybe it isn't different for you, but for me and other people that I've talked to, the delivery of what I say words that are different when I versus when I spend time to sit down and type, right? The delivery is a
Yeah.
lot different when I'm talking versus trying to make it more professional when I'm sitting in a keyboard trying to type something out. Now, it's not very different, but there are little details and words and stuff here and there that I say that I don't necessarily type.
Yeah, but you mentioned some intermediate software between ChatGPT and you talking, right?
Yeah, Whisperflow or Voice Inc.
Yeah. So how do they change your prompt? Do they make it into a more professional prompt while you speak?
Yeah, so they have models you can install within those, and it all and like automatically scrubs it out when you're talking. So ChatGPT does have a voice dictation tool that you can definitely use, but let's say you're using Claude or Gemini or another
Mm.
form of AI tool that you need to enter a prompt into. That's where these tools become very valuable. And also you can add different exclusions, you can scrub off the ums if you want to do that, right? There are different ways to optimize your delivery when it's pasting it when you're done, but Voice Sync, I think, is like 25 bucks for a lifetime access. I just bought it yesterday. Whisperflow is the big player. It's like 15 bucks a month or something like that. But we're going to start to see better voice dictation tools come along as well.
So let's just talk a little bit more about the tools and the stack that you would recommend. So obviously the large language models with probably learning to use ChatGPT before moving on. Um, but what would you then? I mean, are there tools you think that people tend to overlook that they should consider?
Yeah, I think too, if like I mentioned this earlier in the podcast, if you're doing anything related to coding or copywriting, maybe Claude might be worth a shot to look at, right? Because those models, people don't understand, those models are trained differently than GPT models, right? I've read some research somewhere that Claude has more academic sources that it's trained off of versus GPT being more public web source. So Gemini, again, is another one you could look at, especially if you're doing anything media generation with Nano Banana, its image model, or VO3, its video model. And I think outside of that, too, I would really encourage people to dive into an automation platform like Make.com, Zapier, N8N, Gumloop, and start to learn just the basics and the foundations of AI automations. Because in my world of marketing and content creation, I think the ultimate superpower here is being really good in understanding the fundamentals of marketing and also understanding the fundamentals of automations. If you combine those two together, you are a force to be reckoned with, because usually it's one or the other. You have someone who's super technical, and then you have someone who's a very good marketer. Usually there's not a mesh of both there. So I think understanding that will make you an absolute, behemoth or force to be reckoned with in AI as time goes on. I think Google AI Studio, just another free AI tool to throw out there, that's a very underrated tool I don't hear a lot of people mention. Free to use. What I use it for is I actually screen share, and you can have Gemini integrated and a screen share assistant. And if I'm having trouble with an automation in make.com, for instance, I can pull up Google AI Studio and screen share and say, hey, what do you think about this error? Why am I getting this error? Provide a solution. Look up the documentation on Make's website for XYZ and help me with a solution to figure this out. And it actually, I would say it's good about 60, 70% of the time right now. It's going to get better over time as these models improve and whatnot. But Google AI Studio and troubleshooting things like automations or websites, I think that's a very unique one as well. And if you want to get into the weeds a little bit with AI clones and avatars, I use HeyGen and 11 Labs to create an AI clone of myself. If you visit my YouTube channel, my TikTok, or other short form platforms, I would say 90% of those videos are my AI clone powered by HeyGen and 11 Labs. So I know I kind of went through a lot of those there, but those are just some of the ones that I'm using that I think a lot of other people would find beneficial too.
Yeah, let's just talk a little bit about HeyGen and 11 Labs, because I've done exactly the same, and some of my videos are also with the clone. So my wife, she hates my clone. She can, yeah. So she's one of the only ones. She can really tell, right? It takes her about 3 seconds, and she's like, "Oh no, that's your clone again. You should delete that video." What is your experience in terms of the clone? I mean, what is not great at is like really showing a bit more emotion. It will not do that in a natural way. And I also think 11 Labs, like, the tone is a little bit more monotone. But what do you think? Do you think people are fine with it, or what's your experience?
I think the best way to fully leverage a clone here, I would argue for short form versus long form. If you're going to leverage a clone for long form, I think it's much easier to sniff out, right? If someone's watching a long form video. And then the reality here is that I know some people don't care, but at least me, I don't know how you feel about this. When I see something and I know it's AI, there's something that goes off in my brain where it's like, oh, it's AI. Who cares? Right. And I'm not going to pay attention
Yeah.
to it as much as if it were an actual person giving me their real thoughts. It's just an interesting thing that triggers in the brain when once you realize something is AI versus human, that's just something important to think about. But I think from a short form video perspective, the best way to do this from what I've seen is leveraging like a video editor or something like Opus Clip or something to make it look nice with subtitles, noises, B-roll video in the background, all these transitions. I'm not saying you want to hide your clone fully. If someone asks you, hey, is this your clone? I think you should be transparent and say, yeah, here's how I built it. At least that's what I do. I send them the
Yeah.
tutorial for how I built it, right? So I think there's ways to go around it. But from a long form video perspective, I just don't think it's the best use. And I know there's some big time creators out there who are leveraging long form clones and this and that. I am just not a big fan of that. That's just my take. And then 11 Labs, they have the best professional voice clone. I've tested a ton of these. I know OpenAI has audio and all these other tools have AI audio and stuff like that now. But I think 11 Labs still is the best professional voice clone out there after testing all these. If HeyGen were to come out with a solution to clone your voice and just cut 11 Labs out of the mix completely, I think that would be the ideal solution for me. I don't know if you have any thoughts on that too, but I think HeyGen is a very good platform. So is 11 Labs overall in terms of the quality of their outputs. But I just think I would rather use a clone than use one of these fake, AI UGC creators that HeyGen seems to be pushing everywhere now. I just think as time goes on to really scale your content creation, I just think you need to have I think everyone should have a clone if they're a content creator and then leverage it with short form video versus long form.
Yeah, sometimes I see some of these tools like 11 Labs and HeyGen, and I'm kind of thinking they're not putting enough into development, because, like, I'm pretty impressed at some point, and then I think it kind of levels off. Like, I was just thinking, right? HeyGen, for example, if you could, make your clone, and then it would say, okay, but let's put your clone in different surroundings, different angles, like make it really interesting, right? Move around a little bit your clone. you could make short form content that would be much more interesting, right? With a clone. I mean, when I look at some of the really uh, great content creators who has a team, right? Like for example, I enjoy Dan Martell, right? What he does is he's getting filmed from so many angles, and then you see him at home, and then you see him doing a lot of different things, right? Which makes his videos more interesting than what you and I can probably make, right? Just doing it ourselves. I think, why doesn't HeyGen, invest in, having your clone become much more interesting than it is now?
They do. They have different looks and stuff you can create, but again, it comes back to quality, right? It's not high
Hmm.
quality. It's very easy to see that that's some AI generated thing. One thing I'm actually going to start to implement on that note here is I have a green screen, and so I've already talked to my editor about this where I'm going to create clone videos with a green screen in the background where you can just start creating things with my green screen now versus, looking at all these picture frames on the back in my home office. So I think that's the next iteration that I'm taking. And HeyGen is doing that right now. It's just not very high quality, in my opinion.
Yeah, and I think it needs to be, right? I mean, just as you said, right? People are like, I'm not taking it seriously if it's an AI avatar. And and I think it just needs to be really, really good. I still think you need to be candid and say, hey, it's my avatar. I mean, there's stuff the avatar can do that I can't do. For example, I wanted to do a super technical video about the hallmarks of aging and how we're trying to you know uh, uh, decrease the speed of aging, and there were so many words that I wouldn't be able to remember or pronounce, right? So I actually did it with my avatar, and I think the video got better because of it, because of my human limitation of these super technical terms, right?
Yeah.
Um, so sometimes it's not just about saving time; it's actually about creating a better product. Also, I think if you have kind of a limited studio, uh, doing it with a green screen and then really making it interesting can be kind of cool, right? But I mean, I've done this myself. I have a pretty decent green screen here behind me, and I still find it nicer doing these interviews in the studio. Uh, I mean, it just gives a more real feel. I guess we're getting close, right? Where you could do the green screen thing and it's 100% believable uh, that you're sitting in other surroundings.
Yeah, and on that same topic of AI video, just the point I want to bring up here quickly is we're seeing a huge trend of like AI Faceless and AI UGC. In my opinion, that's the new drop shipping. Everyone's selling
Yeah.
courses on it. They're creating all this clickbait videos on it. And here's my take on that. It might be good for views and clout and this and that. What's going to happen when YouTube starts to crack down more on AI content? Do you think everyone creating AI content is checking that altered content box when they're uploading a video? Absolutely not. I would argue that most people probably aren't doing that and just hoping that YouTube doesn't detect it. But let's keep in
Yeah.
mind here, if we're using VO to generate any form of AI video owned by the same company, you don't think YouTube can sniff out something created by VO? So keep that in mind. Also, let's look at TikTok or Instagram. What happens when they start to flag AI content and just ban it completely by looking for watermarks and all the other metadata that they can detect AI video? So then we come back to authentic video like we had before clones or before AI video. So that's why another reason why I think you need to keep it real on the long form. Now, there are instances, of course, where if you're not trying to make it public on YouTube, you're trying to use it privately for something else, then that's fine, in my opinion. But just keep in mind, these big tech platforms are going to crack down harder on AI video as they're infiltrated with millions and millions of AI slop videos. There is no other solution to that if people start dropping off. And I think the next $1 billion idea here is for someone to create a non AI social network using all of these detection tools to whether that's through the blockchain or something that's too confusing for me to figure out, where it can fully detect AI video. And I think people would love that. I mean, that's kind of my hot take here is the next $1 billion idea is a non-AI social media network. As what do we see with Sora? What do we see with VO 3.1? AI slop videos everywhere. Some people might find it entertaining, but there are trends out there that are showing the decline of social media since 2022. And so I think that is a trend that we need to keep in mind here as AI video starts to come more into the scene.
I mean, that's going insane, right? Look at Sora 2. I have to say, it is starting to trick me. I mean, when people edit out the small Sora logo,
I've been doing
you
that.
know,
Yeah.
yeah, you see stuff where at least when it's just on your phone, right, and maybe just not using your full attention watching it. I mean, a lot of it, I'm like, was that AI? Was it not AI? And like 80% of the time when I'm in doubt, I spend some time and I'm like, oh, it was AI, right? But it's getting harder and harder to tell, right? I'm not sure we can tell in just a year's time or less.
And here's the crazy part. Me and you are in the weeds of AI. Think about the average person who doesn't understand any of this and doesn't understand this technology exists to begin with. And I think you brought up a really interesting point here. Someone in my community said this, but I'm going to coin this term at some point: trust recession. We are in a trust recession right now that's getting worse every single day in terms of people not knowing, is this real or is this AI? And what happens when the average person asks that question every time they read something, listen to something, or watch something? When you lose trust, I don't know about you, but I'm not going to get my wallet out and buy something. If I don't trust something, I'm not going to buy something. So you think of all the implications that this has from a societal standpoint, from an economic standpoint. It's going to get very bad, in my opinion. I'm trying to be optimistic about it, but this is one of the biggest issues I've always told people about AI. It's not AGI. It's not these transformers, or it's not Skynet taking over the world. It's what happens when the average person questions, is this real or is this AI? And no one has any idea what to believe anymore. Most people, I would say most creators on the internet are frauds and they're sellouts. I don't know how far down we want to go down here, but like you mentioned, just because they show you something that had millions of views, yes, they likely purchased those views. They could have bought an email list, or maybe they have other channels where they're flooding where they're taking screenshots from their other channels and putting that into a new one just so someone believes that that's the actual real data, or photoshopping a graph on the back end for analytics. These are the little gimmicks that the average person would never think of, because we're good people, right? We have ethics. We would never think to do something like that. But the reality is, most creators on the internet, they're unethical, they sell out, they're frauds. I got into it with some guy. I'm not going to go through the whole story, but he came after me first and he was like, oh, this and that. I don't remember what he was arguing with me about. And I was like, that's interesting. You have 100,000 subscribers on YouTube. I'm looking at your channel. Your last 30 videos have under 100 views. So if your subscribers were real, there's no way that this would be possible. And so I called him out on it. My channel has 2 million more views than his does. I'm at 27,000 subs. And he came back and he's like, oh, you know more about me than I do, blah, blah, blah. And I'm just like, how do you go to bed at night, bro? Seriously.
Yeah.
Like, all of these people are just complete frauds. They're fooling the average person. They're not helping them. They're out to make a quick dollar. And it's really disgusting and disheartening, in my opinion, that people A, fall for it, but people B, have the ethics to even pull something like that.
I think it also ties into AI automation in general, because you see, like I explained earlier, right? I use, automations for everything, they would say, right? I have my AI cold caller. I have my AI email writing set up. I touch nothing. I'm, just a board member of a bunch of AIs running my company.
You're not sitting on the beach and letting 10 AI agents running your business.
Well, exactly, right? That is kind of the image they're trying to sell. And you see all those YouTubers saying, my AI channel is fully automated. I'm pretty much doing nothing myself. And now I'm cashing $1 million check every month, right? And when you see it, if you believe it, right? And in the beginning, I actually did. You kind of feel like a loser yourself, right? You feel like I'm putting all this hard work and I'm getting not a tenth, I'm getting 100th of what they are getting out of it. But tell me more. I mean, have you had more experiences with kind of AI fakers in one way or the other?
I mean, we could go down the rabbit hole and look at most creators in the AI YouTube space in particular. Most people are full of it, right? They're talking about all these shiny agents and shiny automations. And, on LinkedIn, this is a big one, right? Here's my 100 node N8N automation. Make sure you comment below and get my free template, right? Then you get sucked into their email funnel. Then you buy something from them and then it's too late, right? Then you're out of money. You got scammed. But yeah, the problem is we have people on YouTube driving clickbait for views and clout. doing all these shiny things with agents and automations, not caring that someone who actually consumes that content can't implement it into the real world. And so my goal as being a creator in the AI space, I'm at 27,000 subs now. I didn't buy any of them. I didn't buy a single one. My goal as a creator in this space is to be one of the few people that actually shines light on reality and being one of the most honest people in the AI space. That's what I want to be known for. I want someone to be like, oh yeah, Ryan Dozer, that's the guy who tells the truth and doesn't lie and sell out for anything. Because when you're a content creator and a lot of your revenue comes from ad revenue from YouTube, affiliate commissions from affiliate products or sponsorships, of course you're incentivized to say things that aren't necessarily true in hopes that people watch your video to get more views for the sponsor or buy more things from the affiliate links that you're pushing. So people always need to keep that in mind. I do that on purpose. Most of my revenue comes from a service business on the back end. So I'm not incentivized to promote sponsors, affiliates, and whatnot. And honestly, I get blown up by 50 of these people every single day in my email inbox wanting me to promote their tool. And I just say, screw yourself. I'm not going to sacrifice my long-term credibility just so I can shove your AI SaaS product down people's throats. So as I ramble on here, I just want to be known as the most, honest and authentic person in the AI space.
Yeah, I get you. The question is the people who sell the dream, right? I mean, the dream is often what they have achieved themselves, right? They're saying, I now created 10 AI companies. I'm doing nothing but sitting on the beach. How many do you actually think are able, via kind of scamming other people, are able to make a lot of money? Or do you think they're just projecting it and just scraping by, really?
I think they're actually making a lot of money from people buying the dream. They're not, they're barely probably making any money by actually doing the things that they're talking about. As someone who's in the weeds of AI and automations, and I built some agents myself, I can tell you right now that agents and AI in general still hallucinates quite a bit. And one of my hot takes on this topic too is that I think automations are actually better than agents. AI agents still hallucinate. They cost a lot to run. You still need a human in the loop, like we talked about earlier, of someone who understands subject matter expertise. If I'm going to run an AI agent and manage my social media or do any sort of thing that's marketing related, if I don't have subject matter expertise, this agent is not going to do anything. Things are going to fall through the cracks. It's going to post AI slop that doesn't convert. But again, it's an education issue. Someone who doesn't understand this stuff of what is an agent, what is an AI automation, how much can AI actually do? Is it a silver bullet? Is it magic? If you don't have the education, you're likely to fall for these gimmicks. And that is the big problem right now is we have such an AI education gap and we have to start there, or else if people were educated on this stuff, there is no way these people would be able to sell these types of dreams of 10 agents on the beach of let me sit here and let them run my 10 different companies. And so you have the media talking about how all these companies are laying people off every day. And on the other side, you have schmucks on YouTube saying every AI update is insane, which we both know both of those aren't reality right now. So you really have to educate yourself. And of course, listen to people like me and you who are in the weeds of these things and actually tell the truth on reality. That's where I would recommend people start versus falling for all this hype and falling for all these people trying to sell you the dream.
Yeah, that's the trouble, right? I think you have these people saying, well, you're kind of a fool if AI is not already making you millions of dollars and you're already sitting on the beach and enjoying life because of it. Then I think you have the people in the middle, probably where I would place yourself and I saying, AI is incredible. It's wonderful what we can do. There's a ton of opportunities. Obviously, there are dangers as well. But there's so much to be done, right? Let's get to work. And then you have a very big crowd who are either afraid of AI or talking AI down and saying, it's just stupid. It doesn't know anything. It's actually much better if we forbid AI altogether. So let's get some more EU regulation or regulation in the States so we can simply forget about it and get back to our jobs of doing something that doesn't add that much value, because in reality, you could probably automate it, most of the functions at this point. So I think it's finding that balance, kind of increasing that middle where people have a healthy attitude towards AI, I think will be very important. How bullish are you on AI being able to do many of these things we talk about more autonomously in the future?
I think for sure I'm optimistic that agentic technology is only going to improve. And it's funny you brought up the regulation before. I saw a quote that was so true, especially in the AI space, where it said US innovates, China imitates, and Europe regulates. And I think that's so true if you look at the AI space. But I just had to throw that out there. But yeah, I think agentic technology is definitely improving. And we're starting to see more AI web browsers now, right? We have Perplexity Comment with the agent functionality there. We have ChatGPT Atlas now with agent mode integrated inside the web browser now. So I do think agentic technology is only improving as they start to collect more data on people and see what are people buying, how are people navigating the internet. Of course, that's a data privacy issue that OpenAI wouldn't like me to acknowledge. But regardless, we're already in Chrome, right? Google has all our data to even begin with, so it's not much different from that perspective. But I do think automations and agents will get better as time goes on once there's more data to be collected, and also that these models start to improve too, right? Maybe we'll have a GPT-6 or a GPT-10 at some point where the model is hypothetically a lot better than where it is right now. So I think that's important to consider too.
How far do you think we are away if you look at the best models and the best way to kind of connect them in some thought, I guess, of agentic network? How far are we away from somebody getting an idea for a company? Again, let's say it's a digital marketing advisory company or something like that, and then they can just set up an automated flow and pretty much then only manage the company. So basically saying, it could be a daily call with your AIs saying, okay, we'll do this, not this. I mean, for you at this point, is that science fiction or is it doable?
Right now, I don't think it's doable. There might be solutions out there that exist today, but again, it goes back to a quality thing and what actually moves the needle. Right now, that is not reality. I think going forward, there could definitely be something like that. And that's definitely where things are going with OpenAI's new agent builder. I'm not sure if you saw that. They released that about a
Yes.
month ago or so. So that is definitely the direction and where we're headed. I do think it is a possibility. Don't get me wrong. But just me, I think there always has to be, for anything high value and high ticket, I just think there always has to be some form of human in the loop with their years and years of previous experience before generative AI and understanding what good looks like, understanding what moves the needle in a particular industry. There's always going to have to be someone in the loop to make sure that these things are operating properly 24/7 for troubleshooting and things like that.
It really matters what you do when you have that attitude, right? It really matters if you upskill yourself. And I think what is kind of the popular beliefs are either that AI will be so powerful, so it doesn't matter. I might as well just, sit and paint pictures or something because, AI will take all jobs, right? And then I'll get the UBI. And then there's, like we talked about the other one, that AI will just remain stupid. It's all a bubble, right? So both of these avenues will lead to, why should I spend time on it? Why should I go through the pain of actually understanding how this works, right? But the middle ground you're talking about, there the reward for actually upgrading yourself is tremendous, right?
I think in general, where this economy is headed, I can't say where you're located in Europe, but for me in the US, if you understand anything pertaining to AI automations, AI agents, how to properly use these AI models, I think you're going to be extremely valuable to whatever organizations end up existing in an AI era. So keep that in mind. I think this is such a huge education gap that we're in right now, that what you can do listening, if you're just someone who's either really scared of AI or you're really hyped about AI and you're testing all the latest tools, focus on the fundamentals of what actually matters, right? Whether you're a marketer, a content marketing's not going away, right? I don't care what anyone says about AI agents and automations. You still have to understand the foundations of marketing. What does a good hook look like? What is a good email subject line? What actually converts in the body of an email, right? These types of things are not going away. So becoming a subject matter expert on your particular field. Now, if you're in a field that's going to become obsolete, that's obviously a different conversation here. But if you're in a field that's something like marketing or something that's evergreen, content creation, right? We're always going to need these types of things as time goes on. Master the fundamentals of those skills and also master the fundamentals of AI and AI automations. And I think you will be okay versus just sitting in analysis paralysis mode 24/7, being consumed by hype content on YouTube or the media saying so and so laid off a million people, AI is taking all of our jobs. You can't sit in fear. You have to just take action and start to learn things versus just being paralyzed in fear, which is what all these big media companies want you to do as you keep consuming their content and consuming their dream, right, to make them money versus you actually watching out for yourself.
Yeah, it's really interesting. I mean, when you look at the real life examples, right? I was working at a big telco, and in the management group, we talked about we need to spend more on people who have the skills we need, and then we need to get rid of some of the people actually with the lowest pay who do not have the skills we need, right? So I mean, again, there would be a tremendous difference. We'll probably need to accept that we had to hire some people who maybe would operate below us in the hierarchy, but they would earn more. Maybe they would need to earn like $1 million for us to attract them a year. And at the other hand, there would be people earning less than $100,000, but not having the skills that we would need to get rid of. And it's a hot potato, right? Because you would have a lot of traditional managers saying, hell no, I'm not going to hire somebody who's going to earn twice my salary. And that's the interesting part, right? So if you really learn the skills that are that high value, there's so much in it for you. Whereas if you reject it, you will be one of those who are actually made redundant because your skills are not useful anymore.
Yeah, and the problem with corporate America right now is we have so many people. It's just this facade of busyness, right? You worked in corporate, I worked in corporate. We both understand where this is going, where a large portion of these workforces, they're sitting in the corner replying to Slack and email 24/7, this facade of looking busy versus actually doing things that move the needle. And I think AI is truly exposing that and showing the bottom line to these upper level executives. Well, why wouldn't I just implement an AI solution or invest more in my employees that are actually being productive and power them with AI solutions that can do the other person's job, right? I think that's where this whole thing is going when it comes to facade of busyness, corporate America, and in the marketing industry in particular. One trend, or I guess prediction that I actually have, I've worked in the agency world too, is we have bloated teams right now, right? We have an SEO department, a PPC department, a graphics department, bloated with 5, 10 plus people, depending on how big the agency is. I think where this is going to end up going is we're going to have teams of 2 to 3 people, probably 2 people. We have one subject matter expert on whether it's SEO or graphic design, whatever it is. And then we have an AI agents or AI automations expert. When you power those 2 people together, of someone who has subject matter expertise and someone who's an expert at building agents and automated workflows, that's where I think this whole thing is going to go versus bloated teams of 10 plus people where only 2 or 3 of those people are actually moving the needle in the big picture in the first place.
It will be interesting to see how quickly that happens. I mean, what I saw a lot working at Facebook would be these bloated social media departments where, I mean, creating organic traffic, for that you need to create value, right? So if you're selling some generic product, it's not going to help you to have a content calendar and like, share commercial posts. Nobody will like them or read them, and it will have no impact. And if you then just talked about the weather or cute kitties or something, you would actually get a bit of traffic, but it would give you no value, right? No business value at all. So they always ask us, what should we do with these departments? And I always say, close the department. I'm not saying get rid of everybody. There might be people with talent that you can use for something else. But your department, your social media department as is not generating value. And as you mentioned, I think AI will expose that, but I also think there will be many operators trying to delay that. And those will probably be the companies who will fail, right? Because other companies, they will catch this and they will apply the resources to something that moves the needle.
Yeah, and it's also this flawed mentality too, like in the social media world and marketing world in general, is that AI slot moves the needle, right? well, let me automate all these random AI images and AI videos on a social media scheduler. And I check the box, right? My social media is good
Yeah.
to go versus actually spending time to draft high value content that converts into something that moves the needle. There's a huge difference there. And you know exactly what I'm talking about with these checkbox social media people where we got our post done today, we posted on Instagram, on to the next one, right? Those people should be concerned if you're just going through this checklist mentality just to get quantity versus quality.
Yeah, and here I actually see AI as kind of a danger because the next could be saying, this is wonderful. We can now create not one post a day. We can create 100 posts a day with different AI content. And this is where, if you understand marketing, you know that people will need to see the same message in different creative ways, but the same message for maybe 3-4 times a week at least for maybe 8 weeks, right? But if you just machine gun them with a lot of different creatives, they will just sit back confused and say, "What was that? What are they trying to sell me?" But it'll be interesting to see how fast this goes. So just before we end this, I just want to pick your brain on the companies you worked with. How sticky did you find AI? How challenging was it to implement something that they would continue to use and where they could see the value?
I think there's a lot of resistance to change, especially if you're working in an industry that's heavily regulated, like legal or, finance or insurance. That is where we're seeing a lot of difficulties right now, especially when it comes to marketing and content efforts. Because, I help executives and founders build their personal brand. But before we, sign the dotted line here, you have to mark off that it's okay for me to leverage generative AI, of course, trained on your data and your tone to actually start creating content for you. And unfortunately, in several industries that are regulated, it's a big risk to put out anything that's generated by AI where they could come back and get sued later and get all sorts of legal trouble, and this and that. So I would say that is definitely a huge thing. And you also have lower level employees that are very scared of it. They're very resistant to change. And when you're dealing with people like that, it just adds red tape to the mix where you can't just go in and actually solve real world problems with AI that I could solve in minutes, honestly. But then these people are complaining. They're scared their job's going to get taken. They feel threatened. They're resistant to change any of their current day to day workflows that they've been doing for 30 plus years. So I think those two in particular are very, very concerning for businesses, especially like B2B, I notice, and just, traditional legal, finance, insurance. Those are some big ones. But other industries that aren't very regulated, I have a good client right now in the dental IT space, more of a tech niche that's not very regulated. He is full force AI. Of course, it's trained on his data, his set of parameters. It's not shotgun chat GPT slop. But that type of industry, if you're in tech or something that's not very regulated, I would be going full force on AI in terms of content and marketing stuff right now.
Yeah, I agree. Thanks so much for coming. It's been super interesting, and I hope you'll join us again for another chat, maybe where we look a little bit more into the future of what AI will bring in the next maybe 5 to 10 years.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me on. It's been a pleasure to talk to you.